Coming to you from Southern California, this is Mindset, mental health news and information. I'm your host, James Curtis. On today's show,
I'm Benilde Riddle. I'm the author of Welcome to My Breakdown. It's a memoir. It is a funny, sad, poignant look at an aspect of my life. After my mother died, I went into a clinical depression. I know it sounds like, but it's really not. It's life. And ultimately a celebration of coming to grips with all of who you are.
That is indeed the voice of best-selling novelist Benilde Little. She's the author of several works of fiction, including Good Hair and The Itch. Her first nonfiction work was published earlier this year. It's about, as she just described, her plunge into and climbing out of clinical depression. It's called Welcome to My Breakdown. My conversation with Benilde Little in just a moment. But first, this news from the Mindset Report. The Mindset Report, your most comprehensive source for mental health news, available online at mindsetreport.com. In the news this week, one of the most popular stories is about kids who are picky eaters. Now, what exactly does it mean that your kid is a picky eater? Well, first, we're not just talking about a little picky. We're talking about domestic upheaval, table-raising, mealtime disruptive picky. According to Duke University researchers, really, truly picky eating could be an indication of depression later in life. How big a concern for parents? Well, according to the researchers, there's no need to be alarmed, but parents should be alert. And this from Harvard Health. Most of us have heard of the term fight or flight, also known as the stress response. It's what the body does when it prepares to confront or avoid danger. Now, when that response happens in reaction to a real physical threat, the stress response helps us rise to that challenge. But trouble starts when this response is constantly provoked by lesser day-to-day events like money woes, traffic jams, job worries, or even relationship problems. When that happens, it can lead to other problems ranging from depression to high blood pressure. According to the Harvard report, deep, slow abdominal breathing can slow the heartbeat and even lower or stabilize blood pressure, triggering the body's relaxation response. For these and other mental health stories, check out the Mindset Report, available online at mindsetreport.com. Back in just a moment with our main story into, out of, and protecting from clinical depression. Welcome to My Breakdown, a great conversation you won't want to miss with best-selling author Benilde Little. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Mindset, mental health news and information. I'm your host, James Curtis. Welcome to My Breakdown is author Benilde Little's story of caring for aging parents, raising children, being married, plunging into the depths of depression, and climbing her way out and staying out. One of the triggers for her clinical depression, Benilde's mother died. I spoke to Benilde just after Mother's Day earlier this year. This Mother's Day, as you can imagine, a bit rough.
I'm Benilde Riddle. I'm the author of Welcome to My Breakdown. It's a memoir. It is a funny, sad, poignant look at an aspect of my life. After my mother died, I went into a clinical depression. I know it sounds like, but it's really not. It's life. And ultimately a celebration of coming to grips with all of who you are.
First of all, happy belated Mother's Day. And
Thank you.
How was that for you?
Mother's Day wasn't good this time. I mean, obviously, and it's been 6 years. So the first year, horrendous. Second year, really bad. Third year, not so. And then fourth year, fifth year, I was fine. And yesterday, starting on Friday, it was like it was this sort of vague malaise, but then, on Friday night and Saturday, and then yesterday, it was just like, oh, God, this is just awful. And, you go on Facebook, you see all these people. Well, I actually didn't go on Facebook purposefully, but I just imagine all the people on Facebook posting pictures of their moms, which I started doing on Friday, and it just, I just was like, God, she's not here. She's not here, and I miss her so much. And I hate these holidays. And what my friend, I was telling you offline about my friend who I called in the morning. He's an only child. He lost his father, first year law school. He lost his mother his first year out of law school. And so I called him, we were talking, and he said, man, every holiday is horrible. He's like, Memorial Day. And we started laughing, Veterans Day, and because it's true. You just miss them.
You call your book Memoir. Did you come up with that?
I did.
Tell us about that.
I actually did. I was, why? Because I wasn't comfortable saying memoir. To me, I always thought, memoir, who cares about your life? Other people, unless you were, somehow, Madame Curie, who cares? And so I wasn't comfortable owning that. And it is a lot about my mother, which is how I was able to enter the book and not feel self-conscious about writing a memoir. And what allowed me, or what made me even want to write it, was because of losing her.
So do you feel like it's your story via her and your experience, a tribute to her, or something else altogether?
It's a lot about her power and her drive, and who I am is because of her. And that's probably true for many, many people with mothers who were totally dedicated, totally invested in their child, as not just as an extension of them, but my mother and I were very different, but we were extremely close. And, I think a lot of times parents have a hard time understanding their children when they're so different from themselves. And one of the things I write about is that I'm like super sensitive, and I always was, and I used to cry all the time, still do. And my mother was so not that person. And instead of I know sometimes it got on her nerves, and sometimes she was like, oh my God, you feel too much, you think too much, can you just stop? But for the most part, she was in there with me and trying to understand and not trying to stomp that out of me. And that allowed me to become this writer and this, have this different kind of life, very different life than she had. So is it a tribute? It definitely is. Did I sit down and write it because of that? With that in mind, no. But she was a character. She was a character out of a novel. There's so many stories. There's so many stories I didn't put in about her that are just like, oh my God. And people who knew her, they're just like, oh my God, they're writing me saying thank you, because it's like I get to visit with her again,
Yeah.
This was my mother. She would say, she had a friend, everybody had a name, and a nickname that was not, if you heard, you'd be like, oh my God, she's so mean. Like her friend Maria Hernandez. She never called her Maria. She called her my big fat Puerto Rican. Maria was the first person at the funeral, other than family, sitting there sobbing. People just loved her. She was just a character. That's just like a little bit of her. There's so many stories. And so it was easy. It was easy to write those kinds of things about her because there were so many, and she was so, outrageous. But she was also just the most giving and determined person I had ever met. So And so losing somebody like that, who was also your mother, you could probably see how that would just be devastating. Just devastating. And not, not even just as my mother, just as this person who was my friend, who just had a take on life that she would just be like cut through. She was real clear. She would just cut through the BS. Okay, this is how I see it. This is what I think is really going on, but not in a know-it-all way. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a long answer.
She had she had that thing. She had that mom thing where she could just see it.
Mm-hmm.
She could just see it. My guest is Benilde Little. Mm-hmm. She is a best-selling author. Her books include Who Does She Think She Is?, Acting Out, The Itch, and Good Hair. And by the way, your hair is fabulous. It is wonderful. Oh, my goodness. Tell us, for those folks who may not be familiar with you, you're a former editor for Essence Magazine and a writer and a journalist and a whole bunch of other things. Tell us your story. Tell us the arc of your coming to this place.
Did you say ARC, A-R-C-H?
I did.
Or A-R-T? Okay.
I said ARC.
Look at you, all fancy and writerly. Most non-writers don't even know that word or use that word, or maybe therapists do. Anyway, what is the arc of me? I've lived a lot of lives. I grew up in Newark in pre and post riots. Those are two different cities. And a friend of mine wrote on my Facebook after she read the book, and she said, who knew you grew up in a small African village in North America on the East Coast, and it was so funny because it's true. And I never thought about it like that. And so there are characters. My neighborhood was filled with characters. They're in the book. It was an incredibly nurturing, affirming place to grow up. During that time, it was the Black Arts Movement. So it was infused, and I was a little kid, but it was in the air. Black is Beautiful and community centers and jazz music and Martin and Malcolm on record player and Dick Gregory and Pygmy Markham. So it was this rich, and then I had, there was it was a Jewish neighborhood pre-riots that was where Philip Roth grew up, and that was very rich. And there were remnants of that. It was there when I was really little, but I wasn't aware of race and religion and all that. But there were remnants of that after, and so my teachers were still of that ilk, and they were supporting and nurturing. So I had this kind of, it was great. Of course, at the time it didn't feel great, and I was bullied post-riots when my neighborhood changed and all that, and that's in the book. So the arc has been full and diverse, and I don't mean that in the way we talk about it now, just a mix of many, things.
You had a lot of phenomenal experiences. You experienced a lot of success as an adult in your careers. Did you feel that kind of success when you were young?
Did I feel that kind of success when I was young? You mean like in my 20s young?
20s, teens, as a little kid, the kind of thing where people talk about, well, I don't actually know how people talk about it, but...
You mean like when kids talk about what I'm going to be when I grow up?
That plus, that kind of feeling like, I think I was a sensitive kid too growing up. And so I had this feeling of... I was doing my thing in my little world. I never felt like the kind of kid who had all the friends or the popular kid. So it never felt like success to me on that level. But yet still having a mom, probably not unlike your mom, who I never had any doubts about how I was, how things were going to go, and that I would do the things that she told me that I was going to do.
I see.
That you're smarter than those kids. Don't worry about those kids and blah, blah, blah. What was, that kind of infusion, I suppose? How did that feel to you, comparatively speaking?
No. I don't think so. I wasn't like the top of my class.